What is up everyone, welcome to this tutorial where we will be going over how to warp forms. So you have to make sure that you're comfortable with lesson number 2 in the beginner section. Learning the 3 major forms and get comfortable with them first, and then come to this lesson because you need those forms, you need those basics first to be able to do this lesson. So get comfortable with that and then jump into this one. Make sure to head over to the website and grab the free worksheet like the other lessons. Grab the warping worksheet, it's on the website, it's absolutely free, you don't have to pay for anything. Grab that, either print it out if you're working traditionally or load it into whatever software you are using if you are working digitally. The tools I'll be using are a pencil, a Pentel mechanical pencil, it's a 0.5, and a kneadable eraser. If you're working traditionally, make sure to use something you can erase, so use pencil, don't use a pen because you need to erase to learn. Like, making mistakes is such a huge part of the process, so don't use a pen if you're working traditionally. So starting on page 1, we're going to take a major form and stretch it and bend it, so that's what I mean by warping it, and this gives us way more versatility with the major forms because if we just stuck to the 3 major forms, our drawing ability would be very limited, especially in terms of creating more interesting shapes, more interesting forms. So we're going to take a form and gradually warp it. So at the top you can see I have a sphere. It's kind of a wobbly sphere, but it's still a sphere-ish. And then we're going to warp it more and create more interesting forms. And the same thing with the cylinder on the right side. So copy from the examples, take your time with this, erase lots, take your time. This is not going to feel natural if you're new to drawing. This is going to feel kind of challenging, kind of weird, especially in terms of drawing the wrapping lines and really getting into the sense of the 3D space. But the more you do this exercise, the easier it will become, especially if you've just come from the forms worksheet, which is very important. This is going to feel kind of challenging, but the more you do this, the easier it will become. It will become natural to you over time, but it takes a little bit of time, so go slowly, erase lots. And once you're done this page, move on to the next page and make sure that you pay attention to the wrapping lines. It's very important that you pay attention to how you're drawing the wrapping lines, how it describes the form, because that's what creates the illusion of space. If we just do the outer shape, then it will feel very flat, but it's drawing these inner shapes, the wrapping lines, that makes it 3D on the page. So make sure you get that and then move on to page number 2. So on page number 2, we're drawing in perspective and paying attention to overlap. So overlaps are very important when you're drawing perspective because it gives us a sense of what's in front and what's behind. So the top example, you can see that section A is closest to the viewer, so it covers B and C, and B is closer than C, so it covers C. So you can see how these different forms, I started off with the circles on the left side to give you a sense of which spheres are in the front, and then you can see how it affects the drawing on the right side. So pay attention to this when drawing complex forms because it's very important to know which parts overlap the other parts and which parts are close to the viewer. So this is what gives us the sense of perspective. If you just think about your day-to-day view, like when you're looking around, whatever is closest to you, whatever looks close to you is closest to you, and it'll overlap whatever is behind it. So make sure that you pay attention to this as you draw more complex forms. Copy from the examples and note how you can start to create these organic looking forms using these spheres. Like all of these shapes and forms, they look very organic. It almost has life to them. They look a little bit like worms, but you can see how just warping a sphere or warping a cylinder can give you very interesting forms. So this is the real versatility of drawing forms. Sticking to the major forms wouldn't give us as much, but taking this major forms and then expanding on it and really pushing the limits of how we can warp it really gives us this new way of drawing. So copy from the examples, take your time with this, make sure to get the wrapping lines. This becomes especially important when you draw these like organic looking forms because those curves really describe the form. So pay attention to that as you copy. Don't worry too much about copying perfectly though. Make sure that you understand the concepts. The concepts are way more important than copying perfectly. If you just copied without paying attention to it, that's not going to help you. But if you copy and you mess up a bunch of times, but you understand the concept and how it's useful, that's really going to help you in the future. So pay attention to the concept, copy the examples, but don't worry about copying everything perfectly. And then once you're done this page, I'll see you over on the next page. On page number 3, we're copying more examples. So on the left side, we have cylinders that looks a little bit like worms. So I'm adding cute faces to them just to make them a little bit more fun. On the right examples, we start to see how versatile the forms are. So don't worry about copying perfectly, right, like I mentioned, but on the right side, those forms are getting a little bit more complex. I'm adding forms, so you see like some of them look like there was a sphere and 2 cylinders attached to it, and then I was warping it. So you can make it way more complicated by introducing more forms, more shapes that are jutting out. So copy from the examples, and get used to the wrapping lines. So this is really important, right? The wrapping lines is what describes the form. If you just drew the outside, you really wouldn't be able to see what the form looked like. And that's what helps us develop our understanding of drawing in perspective and drawing things in 3 dimensions. So draw the wrapping lines, copy from the examples, and take your time with this. Especially like drawing cylinders that are wrapping around can feel very complicated because you have to kind of get the spacing between the 2 lines to feel like they're actually curving around so that they don't get too close too quickly. So that's kind of a challenging task to get used to, especially if you're only used to drawing in 2D perspective, you're only used to drawing shapes. Drawing forms like this can feel very complicated, so take your time with this. Go slowly, be forgiving, erase lots, and I'll see you over on the next page. So on page 4, we're going to draw branches, and we're going to start with a thick cylinder and then gradually add thinner ones. So large branches support the thinner branches, right? So this is why the trunk is so thick. And that's why you get this effect of branches by drawing a thicker cylinder and then attaching thinner ones coming off it. That's why you get that effect of like a tree, because that's how trees actually work. For the physics to make sense, the trunk has to be the thickest, and then the first few branches have to be really thick, and then they get thinner and thinner outwards. And so that's how you draw branches. And we're also going to add cute faces just for fun, just to make it more exciting. And pay attention to the perspective here. So you can see how these branches move in space, and you can see that some of them are pointing downwards and some are pointing upwards, that we're looking down at them. Like the stuff we did in the second lesson when we were drawing forms, all of that stuff still applies, like the perspective, paying attention to which surface is moving in what direction. So like some of these branches are moving back and away, like paying attention to how it looks in space. Like what you can imagine is that if you could put your hand into the page, which direction would the branch be moving? So pay attention to that, because that illusion is what we're working on. Fundamentally, that's the core lesson here, is that how do we draw the illusion of space and also draw forms that are a little bit more interesting than just the basic forms. You know, how can we warp these to create more interesting effects? That's what we're working on in this page. So copy from the examples, and this is really, I think this really shows the utility of drawing forms. You can see that just drawing warping cylinders can create branches really easily, and this also could be taken to draw, you know, a snake or anything else that's cylindrical. Like you could really draw so many different things just from learning how to warp a cylinder. So I think that's why this is impressive. Like once I understood this really changed my perspective on drawing, and it makes everything easier because it gives you this foundation that you can always return to. So this, I think, is super useful. So take your time with this. Make sure to do a little bit of sketchbook practice as well, and we're going to do some practice on the next page as well. So I'm really excited if you're new to drawing this. If you've understood this concept and you're new to drawing, this is going to be great for you because it's going to really open doors for you. But it does take a lot of practice because it's not something that comes naturally. So finish this page, make sure to erase lots and take your time with this, and I'll see you over on the next page. On page number 5, we're doing a practice page, so we're going to solidify what we learned by practicing it from memory. So try to do stuff that you remember, and you can use reference if you want to once in a while, but the more you push yourself to draw from memory, the more you'll memorize. So this is like scientifically proven that active recall is the best way to learn. So the more you do active recall in your drawing, the better you'll get. But you do need to look at reference once in a while, right? You don't try to force yourself to active recall things that you don't really actually understand yet. So take your time with this, fill the page with whatever forms you want to. Like if you want to do warping spheres, then go ahead and do that. If you want to draw branches, go ahead and do that. Just have fun with this and approach it with curiosity. So I think the biggest thing is to approach drawing with curiosity, because that's the only way that it'll be exciting. If you try to take it too harshly and you try to learn it by forcing yourself to do really difficult exercises, it won't be as fun. But if you have like a certain amount of childish curiosity and like imagine that you're exploring this space, that makes it way easier to learn. It makes it more exciting, makes it more fun. And I think that's like a very important concept to learn through drawing, because I think it's the best place to learn this concept, because there's no real consequences to playing around, just having fun. You know, if you do this page badly, you know, you can always just do another page. Like there's no consequences to this. And that's why this is why I think drawing is so great. And mistakes are also a part of the process, so make sure to have your eraser handy. Erase as much as you need to. Take your time with this, have fun with this, fill out the page. And I also recommend exploring more in your sketchbook. The more exploration you do, the quicker you'll learn. The more you take initiative to do things on your own, the better you'll get, right? So if you took a day and just drew a bunch of branches and really played with warping cylinders, the more you would just understand this concept. And that's it for this lesson. Thank you so much for checking this out. I have more drawing tutorials for beginners over on the website, and I'm expanding the library of tutorials. This is something that I want to be spending my time on. So if you like this type of stuff, make sure to head over to the website, and I we'll see you in the next video, and also feel free to subscribe if you like this video. Thanks so much. See you in the next one. Bye. Oh.